Next up, we have Bowrna Prabhakaran, who is a seasoned developer with over 11 years of experience. She first discovered FOSS during a very tough phase of her life, and she was contributing to Apache Airflow. When that ended abruptly, she again relied on FOSS, but this time to build her own company, which offers open source solutions. So today, I welcome Bowrna Prabhakaran to share her journey of how FOSS not only shaped her career, but also her life journey. Can we have a round of applause for her?
Hello, everyone. So after 2 talks about the product, now I'm here. I'm going to share my journey in contributing to open source projects. So in today's talk, I'm going to share about the learnings and the realizations that I had when contributing to the open source project. And I'm going to present it in the chronological order. And the main intention for this talk is not to delve very deeper into the technical aspects, but just give the glimpse of the path that open source has showed me. So a little bit about me. I'm an open source contributor for over 3 years, primarily focusing on Apache Airflow. And I'm a former outreachy intern for Apache Airflow, and I have experience in tech industry for over 11 years. And now I balance my time in contributing to open source and taking care of my child. So it is in the year of 2020, that was when I started making contributions into open source projects. Until then, I was using so many open source projects in my day work, but I was not contributing back. So it was in that year I tried to contribute to many of the projects, and some of them includes Hopscotch, DeepChem, and even I tried one of the Python Kafka client. So when I tried to contribute in one of the Python Kafka client, I picked up one of the issues from their issues list, and I had some questions related to that issue. So I asked the question in that particular issues history, and I didn't get reply for that issues for the comments that I made. And only later I realized that project was not active at all. So this was my first experience in trying to contribute to open source project, and I had my own struggle in getting it started. So I applied for Outreachy internship. Outreachy is a program where they support open source contribution with a guided mentorship. But in order to get that internship, I have to make a significant contribution to any one of the open source projects that they have listed. So in my cohort at that time, there were about 45 projects listed. I picked up 2 or 3 projects and tried contributing to that project. And finally, I contributed to the Apache Airflow project. So for me, contributing to Apache Airflow was easy because of these reasons. The first thing is they had the support channel in Slack, and there were several channels, like very specific channels. Like if you want to contribute to the documentation, they had a channel for that. If you're a first-time contributor, then there is a separate channel where in the description they have added that don't be intimidated to ask question in this channel, as we understand that you are a new first-time contributor to the project. Just go through the contributor guidelines before asking your question. So that felt like a safe space for me to go and ask questions. So I followed reading the contributor guidelines. And when reading the contributor guidelines, it was neatly segregated into specific topics like how to get started, how to set up your instance for contributing, how to run tests, how to build the documentation. There are several small topics, and it was neatly organized. So after that, there is also option to subscribe to the developer email list in Apache projects, where most of the feature discussion and all the breaking changes that is made in the code repository is discussed in the email list. So I subscribed to that developer email list. And when I started to initially get those emails from Apache Airflow, it was difficult for me to understand what is the topic they are actually discussing in the beginning. So, but slowly I tried to read what are the conversations happening, and now I can figure out like, okay, they are discussing about these particular features in this discussions. So then they had a neat issue list. So for every issues that is put in the Apache Airflow, they have proper labels like whether it is a UI related or API related, or it is a core issues, or is it a beginner friendly issue, or some important tags like that. So for a beginner like me, it was very easy to go find the issue, pick up the issues. Like I picked up very good first issue and beginner friendly issues during my initial contribution to Apache Airflow. Then all the issues that in the Apache Airflow was neatly organized according to a particular template. So they have a clean steps of how to reproduce this issue, in which environment this issue occurred, and all the details. So for a first-time contributor, I could just go read all these steps, and it was easy for me to reproduce and try fixing it in my instance. So for these reasons, I picked up Apache Airflow compared to the other projects. So like most of the beginners, I started reading the documentation and found few typo errors and few documentation related issues, and started making contribution to the Apache Airflow project in those places. So the initial struggle for me in getting that the contribution that I made into the Apache Airflow branch is raising the pull request. So because Apache Airflow was a very huge project, there were about 3,000 contributors who actually contribute to that project alone. So they had a specific set of rules, like in order to bring your changes into the main branch, they will specifically ask you to git rebase your branch, which I struggled initially. And then after making your pull request, they had a set of CI pipeline test. So that CI pipeline test included checking the code quality, formatting checks, styling checks. And if any of that pipeline test failed, then your pull request is not eligible to get merged. Then after fixing all those pipeline test fixes done, then there will be other reviewers who checks your code and give comments on where to improve, or they specifically tell the places where they see we can do better. So after going through all this and resolving the conversation by either taking in the suggestions that the other reviewers gave, or at least countering with the fact like why this cannot be done with all the points, we have to do all these process and get all the conversation resolved, and only then your pull request is eligible to be merged into the main branch. So for a beginner like me, it was extremely difficult to go through this process to get my pull request merged initially. So the next important learning that I had in the making open source contribution is asking the right questions. So this is one of the links that is shared by my mentor. He told that don't ask to ask, just ask, but be very specific about your question. Say example, you have a question where you struggle with setting up your development instance, just ask what is the problem, what are the steps that you have done until now, where you are stuck right now, and share the stack trace or some of the logs to that to the questions, so that it will be very easy for us to respond to you. Also, the round trip time to get answers also will be less, because mostly all the contributors are spread across the world. So always ask question in a very detailed way. So this is one of the very important learnings for me. So I had this question on why do I have to rebase my code? Because I was so used to this git merge workflow that I had questions on why do I have to rebase my code again, in contrast to the git merge. So I was hesitating to ask this question in the first time contributors channel, thinking that what people would think if I'm going to ask this question. But fortunately at that time, one of the other contributors to the community members asked the question in the channel, why do we have to do and how to do a rebase in the pull request. So the other community member explained why they have to do a git rebase, because it is a very huge community with many active contributors. So if you are going to do a git merge, your commit history is going to show a lot of information. So in order to make a clean history of commit, we are going to follow git rebase, and it will be easy to distinguish what are the code changes that you have done compared to the other existing changes in the main branch. So we are going to follow the git rebase, and that was the information given in the Slack channel at that time. And few days later, I just went and checked the contributing guidelines in Airflow, and I have highlighted the part there. So they have updated the one of the other community members updated the contributing guidelines on how to rebase the pull request, because this question was frequently asked in the channel. So they have picked up that information and added it to the documentation. So it didn't stop with that. Then there is another community member who enabled the button in the GitHub itself for the Apache Airflow repository, where once you raise the pull request, you can do a rebase in that particular pull request itself with a button click. So after making this change, they posted about this change in the channel, saying that as many people are struggling to understand about rebase, we thought this will be useful, and we made these changes. So it was at that time I realized that why we have to ask questions in the public, because if we ask the questions in the public, it will be beneficial to the community for the greater good. So if we, rather than asking to a person specifically or discussing in a call, it was important to ask such questions in the channel in community open source projects, so that it will be available for other members later. So the next thing that I started doing after beginning my open source contribution was reading other pull requests. It was one of the fastest way for me to start understanding a particular project. So I'll share the screenshot of one of the pull requests that I read during my initial phase. So this is one of the pull requests where the community member shared that, see, if you are making a many pull request, if we are making many API calls, and if the API calls response code is 429, we are not retrying the API call later as it is an error code. We do retry only for error codes that start with 5xx. So we have to fix this issue. Then another community member shared information saying that 429 is a status code, which means that your server is busy at that time. So if you are going to continuously retry making API request at that time, we are going to overburden the server. So let's not do that, and we can try a different way of adding the delay between the API calls. And he suggested using Tenacity library. So that was a new learning for me at that time. So I went and explored what is Tenacity. And it is a library that you can add to your API call. Say example, this is a simple function which is trying to upload a file, and if it error codes, this function is decorated with the Tenacity library, where you can add configuration on how you have to wait between the retry. Do you want to add a fixed delay between the retry, or you want to exponentially increase the delay between the retries, and after how many number of retries you have to stop making an attempt. All these configurations can be provided to the Tenacity library, and it will take care of retrying to make API calls. So that was a important, I gathered this information just by reading the other pull requests. So that is when I realized that, okay, to understand more about the project, let's go and read the already existing pull request to see how the community works. Then the next important learning I had is that code is not an asset, and you should not worry about throwing the code away. Because after making some few considerable contributions to Apache Airflow, this is my timeline of making contribution to Apache Airflow project. See, here the purple color indicates that my code got merged into the main branch of the Apache Airflow, but the red one indicates that my code is closed for reasons like it was taking longer loading time. I should have done it in a different way, should have provided a different perspective and solved it in a very different way. That is as suggested by the reviewers. So it was disheartening at the beginning, but when I realized it now, I think I learned a lot from the pull request that got closed rather than the pull request that got merged into the branch. Because only in the case of closed pull request, I learned how I should actually give a pull request. Like, what are the factors I have to check, like the loading time and the better way of approaching the problem. So I had more learning in the closed pull request rather than the merged pull request. So I realized that later. And this is a very interesting learning for me, that open source was a very rich ecosystem. So, because it is like a huge forest where one species depends on other species, like it thrives based on the dependency of the other species. So this is one of the pull requests that I raised to the Docker documentation. So how this happened is, when I was working in the Apache Airflow project, I was working in the Docker operator, and in the underhood, it was using the Docker compose command to run. So when I went and checked in the Docker compose command documentation, I found that the documentation didn't have information about the different options that you can provide using the Docker compose command. So I thought, okay, let's try raising a pull request to the Docker documentation about those changes, and I made a pull request. Then it was at that time I realized that, see, like how I started with Apache Airflow, and slowly I can start contributing to the other projects. So it was a very important learning for me at that time. And the next learning is the written form of communication is very powerful, because in case of open source, most of the discussions happens through the issues, pull request, discussions, or the developer email list. So the good point about the written form of communication is you can go back to it whenever you want to check. And also, when you put your thoughts as a written form, you will have a better way of thinking. So that I realized that only after experiencing it. So this is another pull request that I worked in during the Apache Airflow contribution. And see, I have highlighted the number of conversations that I had with other reviewers to get this pull request merged. So it was like back and forth. I had to make 128 conversations to get this pull request merged. So it actually took more time than the actual work done for making this pull request changes at all. But when I started to write more, my thought process became better. So whenever you like writing a message is not just like exchanging your thought process or ideas or information. It actually helps to generate new ideas and thought process. So only when I experienced that, I was able to realize it. So with that, it helped me to actually start writing information in some bigger form, like blog post, after making writes in the pull request conversations. So with that experience, now I want to try out different project. So with the experience of Apache Airflow, I thought I can try a different project now. So I picked up Frappe, because not for contributing, I picked up Frappe not for contributing, but I want to implement one of the Frappe solutions for one of my friends. They want an ERP solution. So I thought, okay, let's pick Frappe as it is open source. And I try to run few of the Frappe apps, like Frappe School Software and Frappe LMS and Frappe Web Builder. Frappe is a full stack framework with which you can build multiple apps. So I thought I can check more about Frappe, and started seeing this project. And so after working with Apache Airflow and with that experience, when I started working on the Frappe, I had some preconceived notion like, okay, Frappe is a multiple app. It is going to take me longer time to set my development instance. So that was the notion that I had, because one of the major blockers for any beginners in the open source project is the time that they spend in setting up the developer instance rather than getting the first issue fix done. Because you may face issue in setting the developer instance, and you will face issues, and we do not know where we can go and fix those issues. That was the story that happened to me initially. So I was prepared when I started with Frappe, like, okay, even if it's going to take time, let me do this. But astonishingly, Frappe had a very easy way of setting the development process. They had really good documentation. There was video tutorial by Hussein, and there was a very interesting CLI tools named as Bench in Frappe. So Bench is a CLI tool by Frappe to do the multiple app deployment, to manage the multiple app deployment. So I picked Frappe Docker way of installing, installed the Frappe Docker in my machine, and installed the bench inside my Docker containers, and started the Frappe. So I'll just show how easy it was. So I already have cloned the Frappe apps inside my Docker containers, and I have associated all these Frappe apps to the site names. So these are the site names and these are the application. And then I simply run bench start. So this actually runs the Frappe framework, and it runs in the port number 8000. Now all the apps that I have inside my bench is active. So now it is this is a web builder app of Frappe, which is running in 8000, and this is the Frappe school project. So I had multiple apps of Frappe entered into a development mode in very few commands. So I was able to appreciate this entire process because of working in the previous project. So after working in a different project, I was able to appreciate like how easy it was to get started to do a development work with Frappe. So I think it is a very important learning for me, and now I thought, okay, let's go and pick this important learning and go and share to the other projects that I was working on. Then okay, so after Frappe, then I tried working on another project for FOSS Hack 2024. So during the FOSS Hack, there were some list of existing projects, and I picked up Listm in that because it was developed using developed in Golang and Vue.js. I wanted to learn Golang for a very long time, so I thought, why not let me do that by trying to work in one of the existing Golang projects. So I picked up Listm. Listm is a newsletter and mailing list manager. So I thought I picked up Listm, and after getting to understand more about the project, I realized that, so in my previous work experience, I strongly believe that if we can write extensive SQL code, we can actually minimize the number of codes in the application side, and your apps also will run faster. But if you are using ORM, we cannot actually put the SQL code to full use, is my thought. It is, in my opinion, I had this thought. But when I dig more into the Listm, I found that Listm also uses raw query. There is no ORM in Listm. They actually run the raw query in the backend. And so I was excited about this unconventional route that I thought it will work, but I haven't never experienced working in any of the projects. So I thought, okay, let me try with Listm and see how working with raw query will work out. So this is one of the queries in the Listm to create campaign. So my intention for sharing this query is not to explain how this query works. My intention here is to tell about what are all the thoughts that kickstarted in my mind after seeing this query. So this is a query written in PostgreSQL with common table expressions. So the first thought I had is, say example, if I'm going to use ORM, how will I express this query using ORM? So this was my first thought. And then the next thought is, if they are bypassing a ORM, say example, ORM takes care of user management, session management. It actually prevents the SQL code injection. So if they are bypassing all the ORM, how they are taking care of all these steps, like preventing the code SQL injection and in the Listm. So I further dig in the Listm to find out more about parameterized queries, prepared statements, and other stuffs. So actually, all these findings initiated because of seeing or working on such a query. So these are the other things that I learned by contributing to Listm. So as it is a Golang and I wanted to learn Golang, I found out about pipes in Golang, where pipes is a communication channel that can be used to communicate between the Go routines. So this is like a queue mechanism that the language itself offers. I had experience working in Java and Python, so Golang is entirely new to me. So I began to appreciate that language. And the composition in Golang, say, example, you have a type interface in Golang. So with my experience of working in Java, after seeing the interface keyword, I started to look for the keyword implement. Where is the implementation done? But there is no explicit implementation in the Golang. So I found out that the language deals with composition in an entirely different way. It was a difficult concept to wrap around my head initially. And then about all the PostgreSQL, putting effective use of SQL using parameterized queries and prepared statements and common table expressions too. And I also get to know about different other Go libraries like SQLX, GoSQL, and LabStack Echo, other web framework, by contributing to Listm. So with this, I end my talk. So my intent is not to delve deeper into the technical aspects, but just show you like how contributing or just checking one of the open source projects can kickstart many ideas in your mind. So I hope this will also lead you to explore more open source projects. Thank you.
Thanks, Bowrna. That has to be one of the most approachable introductions to getting started with open source contributions that I've seen, honestly. I think all the learnings you shared really showed how the progression looks like when you get started, and really captured that experience really beautifully.